we've had so much stuff happen in the last. I mean, I can't even keep up. I don't know how things have been for you, but
yeah, it's been crazy. So I was at the RNC, with all that, and it's dude, it's like what 2.5 weeks ago, the Republican presidential candidate for president was almost assassinated. Now it's like, oh, it's just completely forgotten about.
It's not even. I'm still walking around like, I'm sorry, am I the only one in the room who's
right?
Did the president?
This was kind of a big deal. It's like the story of the decade, and now it's like, it's just now the next one.
It's you'll always remember where you were moment when it happened. And that's the one thing I've been talking about with this administration is we've had way too many remember where you were moments in this administration. I mean, October 7th, the debate, the assassination attempt, and then you turn on the news today and you have politicians saying, well, he brought it on himself. The only thing they're not saying is like, how was he dressed? Was he asking for it? With the red tie, seductive. It's just right. You just have. Go ahead.
And then of course you have on the other side. It's like she was never border czar. It's like
no.
Wait. I was like, yes.
Like when my kids do this, they get spanked. There's a broken cookie jar on the ground. There's cookies everywhere. We did not touch the cookies, Dad. It's a figment of your imagination.
No, man. At some point, it's just like, look, just level with this. You're just saying, hey, we're gonna lie for a minute.
Or it's going to be more like an hour. Like we're laughing on the outside, but it's got to be at some point you end up crying on the inside when you think about. Because one of the things, and this is funny because when people ask me about what one of the reasons I got into politics, or even just it wasn't even politics. It was about understanding how my money works, understanding taxation, and you were the forefront. I mean, the WWE when we were there, they would have classes on finance and things like that in place for us to learn about taxation and quarterly taxes and stuff like that. But when it came from you, not just the top guy, a star, who would come in and just talk to us and make us think and challenge us, there was such a big thing. And now I'm seeing it now, and it's funny because I was adamant about I don't want to hear about who's replacing him. All I want to talk about is who's been running the country. And I was watching one of your interviews, and you brought that point up. And again, I don't think we should be talking about who's going to replace Joe as who's been, who knew when they knew, and I think that is what we have to keep. It's so hard because they want to get into feelings. The news is all about feelings right now. And there's this tremendous honeymoon going on with Kamala. But when you look at that as a person who serves the citizens, how uncomfortable does that make you feel that they could run with something like that for such a long time? And then just basically say, whoops.
Yeah. I strongly believe in transparency, and I believe in holding people's feet to the fire. One of the issues that we're having now is there is so little confidence in the media that no one believes anything they say anymore. And that's not good.
No,
I mean, seriously, that is not good. Because literally it's like, they say this, and, and then we look at the media, and the media just has their own narrative. And I think that most people just then tune out because, everybody's lying to them, being disingenuous, gaslighting, whatever. And that's not good for our society at all. And that's one of the things that really bothered me about COVID too, was just, these very important institutions have literally been degraded. They've done it to themselves. But public confidence in important institutions is just done, and with good reason. I mean, people are tired.
Yeah,
of
about to say, yeah.
Because, so. But if you don't have a media that people are confident in covering these things, then transparency starts to go out the window, and that's very, very bad. That's kind of where I see us going.
Yeah, because it's funny. When the assassination attempt happened, I was in Oklahoma. I do my stand-up comedy tour instead of have to be at the RNC. Right. I have this thing of going into big arenas and not being on the card and having to sit all day. For some reason, it just bothers me, so I avoid it like the plague. I think you would get that more than any, like, oh, I'm here, hurry up and wait. So I was like, no, I'm going to go on the road, brothers, and I'll see you guys when I get back. Yeah. But
Exactly. Yeah.
I went to and I assumed that I was going to cancel my stand-up show. I just assumed, being in Oklahoma, considering that I didn't want to leave the TV myself, because I was like, we're watching a horrific historical event. A man lost his life. Another man's fighting for his life. And so, but the people, was a sold out show. They were there. And instead of doing the show, I did a Q&A. Just let's talk about it. Let's see how we feel. I said, I don't have all the answers. I'm watching the same thing you guys were. And it was amazing. There was some anger at first, but then it just got down to what American people, they just don't feel good about the country and the way that our government, they feel like ever since COVID, the government had decided we know best. Our way is the only way. And even though we present it to the American people as rejected, we're going to do our thing anyways. And I think the biggest victim in all this, I feel, is Joe Biden. I don't think he was an active participant based off his mental abilities. I don't think he was. I think he really thought he was calling shots.
Yeah. There's a lot of jokes and memes floating around on social media about interns telling, I bet he was mad when his intern told him that he'd resigned, right? And although not resigned, stepped out of the race. But I agree with you. I don't think, just based on what we've seen over the past, several months, and even, you go all the way back to 2020, and the fact that they ran the campaign out of a basement, and he had some gaffes then, so you could see this was starting, but it's really, really accelerated. And I absolutely 100% agree with you. And, the media is so focused on the horse race of the campaign. It's like, wait a second, guys, we have 4 months before the election, 6 months before whoever, is elected president takes over. Who is running the executive branch of government?
Asking for a friend, not even me. Because if we do ask, that's another thing that bothers me is like when we do question, and I think the assassination attempt, to put it politely, we have more questions than answers. And some of the questions we don't necessarily want to hear the answers to. I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all, but based on the blatant, it was shocking. As a bodyguard, that picture of President Trump, that will be a statue one day. That is a World War II type photo, is the worst bodyguarding photo in the history of bodyguarding and protection. To put your hand around, and the best you can do is cover a breast. You can't be smaller than the person you're protecting. The person you're protecting can't be stronger than you. And it just seemed like it was too many coincidences to just be like, And my experience has been, and I don't think we're going to have to wait 40 years like we did with a lot of the strange happenings with our government, given the fact that, not from the media, because you're right, they have absolutely no chance of anyone believing anything they say, but the American people who were there, the local police department who are coming forward and telling their stories. And honestly, if it wasn't for local law enforcement, we would be having a very different conversation right now. The law enforcement climbing that roof. But there's so lack of faith in our FBI, our CIA, our government. And then when we see them before Congress speak and they have no answers, doesn't that give you even more pause? Like, who's making these decisions?
Absolutely. I've dealt with the Secret Service on a number of occasions, and they are always very professional. They're very competent. So the fact that someone can get clear line of sight to Donald Trump on a stage from 150 yards, which is a pretty easy shot for almost anyone with the right equipment, the fact that could happen is mind-boggling to me. Because again, when years ago, Vice President Pence came here. It was just everything was just locked down. Yeah. Before I got into office, President Obama came through town. And again, everything was just locked down. So the fact that could happen is mind-boggling. And, I don't hold the agents themselves.
No, neither do I.
At all. It's not their fault. Even like you were talking about, did they have the wrong agents? I would.
Yeah, you can be the bravest agent in the world, but the genetics is genetics.
Yeah, if you're, like you said, if you can't cover him with your body, you're not a great shield. That's just the fact of the matter. But I'm sure that they did the best that they could too, right? I think that everybody on the ground was doing the best that they could, but something went bad wrong, and we deserve to know what that was.
And I'd also think that for some reason, a resignation is not good enough. I wouldn't have allowed her to resign just so I could have fired her. Because I think there is no accountability at the top. And to segue a little bit, you have been nothing but accountable, serving. And one of the things that I was so impressed with is your commitment to trade schools. And I have been screaming that is and I get it because you remind me a lot of Mike Rowe. You guys are very, very, very precise, deep thinkers. And he talked about it was the reason why trade schools were basically wiped out was because you couldn't go to college and a trade school. It had to be college or nothing. Like if your son was like, I'm going to be a plumber, he's failed. No, he's just going to have a job without debt when he gets out of there, and will be able to walk out of there and go straight into employment and literally in a couple of years have his own business. So would you, with the model that you guys have done, are you looking to open with other cities in Tennessee and stuff to be like, hey, follow our blueprint? Because I think it's very successful what you guys are doing.
So Nashville actually had already done kind of what we've done here. They were working with the same trades association and had the same apprenticeship center. I don't know if they've had the kind of the wraparound as far as we also have our VOTech college, the Tennessee College of Applied Technology is also doing some work there. And we're also getting schools, the high schools involved as well. So I don't know if they do all of that, but yes, we're one of the first in the state to do this. And I certainly hope that as people see the results, that they'll take a look and say, hey, we should do this here too. I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday who works with one of the big home builders here in town, and they only have like a few plumbers that they work with, like 3 that actually do the work, and they pay them by fixture, okay?
Yeah.
Their 3 plumbers made $300,000 each last year. I mean, there's a lot of blue sky for people who want to get into the skilled trades.
Listen, I have electricians. I recently bought a farm in New Jersey, and I'm working on my pasture and growing my stuff, and the house has got to be rewired. And these electricians, I could probably put them through school with the amount, but you can't have it without them. Like, you need it. Right. So. But again, same thing. These guys, a lot of them are the electricians that come to my house and do work and stuff. They're around 30 years old, and their bills are paid. They got a smile on their face. Oh, you got a problem, Rob? No problem, Tyrus. And I'm grabbing my face because my checkbook's hurting. But but it just goes to show there's no competition for a lot of them. A lot of the guys are they're overworked. And you can't DEI it because this is the one thing you can't DEI. Either a trade or you don't. There's no put them in there. Well, we see what happens to that because then your airplane doors fall off. So
and you can't outsource it either. I mean, it's not like you can call a foreign country like you do with call centers and expect someone to come to your house.
Exactly.
Absolutely not. And you graduate from whatever program or go straight into the workforce, you don't have any student debt.
Yeah.
So you don't have that enormous overhead already hanging over your body and over you. And I think too, one of the important things to think about is for more at-risk communities. If we can get some of those young people involved in the trades, and then they can learn some business stuff, and then they open a shop in their own community and start hiring people in that community, man, that just changes everything.
Well, small successes build great successes. And you mean to tell me if I put 2 years into this, I'm going to walk out of here with a job, an opportunity to be my own boss and stuff. That message should resonate with anyone, anywhere, but we're not getting that message. We're still getting unfortunately, and again, education, I know that's something that you're also huge on, and it goes hand in hand with trade schools.
It does.
I just recently, I'm homeschooling and not all my children live with me, so I'm always worried about public school and stuff. I recently saw the new grades, how grades are, and I was horrified. It was in California released a new grade curve. To fail a class, you have to do 20% of the work to get an F. 49. Now here's and again, I usually don't go to the phone, but I have to read this to you, and I was just shocked by this. So when an A is 84, to 100%.
90 or something.
95 if you're lucky.
Right.
A B is, this one's staggering, 64% to 84% is a B. A C is 44% to 64%. A D is 24%. So if I show up to school one day a week, I should be able to pass with all D's and get a degree. It's just what is happening with the education system.
Yeah, what a huge disservice to kids as well. I often feel that what we've done is and we look at the institution of public education, and it's important, but we don't look at the product that comes out. Ultimately, the product is, can these kids read, write, do arithmetic, succeed when they leave school? So when you basically, and in our schools in our county, what they do a really good job. I've been very impressed with what they've been doing. They have some innovative programs, and my view when it comes to education is young people should be exposed to as many career paths as possible, because all of us have different skills and gifts. And for far too long we've said pigeonhole kids, and this is the way to be successful, like you were talking about. Graduate high school, go to college, take a lot of debt, get a degree in something, and then kind of figure it out.
Right.
And that just hasn't worked. Obviously, 4-year university is completely appropriate for some kids. For other kids, it's going to be a waste of time and money, and then they're just not going to be successful. But when we're just cranking kids out and they're just going through the motions, they come out of school and even
if you send them to college,
read or whatever.
Even if you send them to college with a 10th grade reading level, and I'm being positive in that one, and they were going to flunk out, but they're going to have the debt on top of that anyways, or they end up with a gender study degree with the same type of premise. So now they're uneducated with a degree that's not worth anything, and of course it's white people's fault. So it's just the amount of crazy feelings instead of facts in this country drives me crazy. And I look at leadership, like where we're going, like obviously, depending on how this election goes. But when I think of 2028, one of the names that I float around in terms of policy and a star in the Republican Party, and I'm sure you're no stranger to the main event, but your name keeps coming up in circles and circles about getting America back to moral respect, fiscal responsibility, investing in the right things. Like you've been body these things. Is there any interest? And I know you're never gonna, I'm not gonna get any breaking news here, but has it ever crossed your mind about moving up that notch with what you have shown? Because listen, some people get into it just off the name. He was Kane and he's mayor and this stuff. But you came in as Mr. Jacobs and handled business, and so is that something you think about? Or I know you're hearing it. If I'm hearing it, I know you're hearing it.
No, it's not. I have no desire to go to Washington, D.C. I think that there's a lot of things that can be done at the local and state level, and especially at the state level. And say you look at Tennessee, and Tennessee's really set itself apart from a lot of other states. We've been like second in GDP growth for however many years. We actually had positive growth through the pandemic. I think we're the only state that did that.
That's a fact.
We're the best fiscally managed state in the country, one of the lowest debt burdens. Tax burden is second lowest in the country, state and local taxes. So for me, what we need to do in a place like Tennessee is keep on doing what we're doing, improve ourselves as much as possible. And, when people are looking at, they're living in some of these other states, which are literally basket cases, and then they're looking at us, then they start making changes where they live. So I think that a state like Tennessee, Texas, Florida, some of these other states that are very well run will be beacons to the rest of the country of how state government should work. And hopefully that's one of the ways that we can change the country. But in Washington, man, it's just, there's just so many things going on up there, and it really is a swamp. And, good people go in and they either get frustrated because they can't change, or in some cases they just throw up their hands and leave, or sometimes they unfortunately become part of the machine.
Yes.
Because that's the only way to survive. So I really think that a lot of changes can be made, especially at the state level, which would be productive for where you live. Ultimately, then that would be productive for the entire country.
which is a great point, and it's always the ones who don't want to do the job that are most qualified to do the job. And it just based, like I said, just anyone who has not spent any time listening to you speak or listening to the way that the passion that you have, and you take a lot of pride in serving your citizens, and you do it at a high level, and you have been a role model, especially for guys like me, when the wrestling window or the athletic window starts to close, and you have a brain. Just because you're big and you did sports entertainment doesn't mean that you can't go into other venues and be dominant and successful then, because at the end of the day, hard work, being educated, and knowing what you're talking about will take you a long way. So, I thank you for that, inspiring me and a lot of guys myself. And you have a lot of fans, not just in the wrestling world, just as it's hard to outdo. You have a Hall of Fame career, no question, probably 2 or 3 times over. Even DDS should go in my opinion. But it was you scared me when I thought you were pulling teeth out. But
Thanks,
what would your message be to someone like yourself who was coming into the end of their career and you didn't have to do anything? Like, you're a humble guy. You never walked around like, yo, check out my bling, fellas. I just bought this 44-inch, rimmed car. Like, you were like, save your money. I even think at one point you were a planner. And I said, hey, if things go off, you think I could hide in the basement with you? And you're like, no, get your own stuff. And I was like, that's a good point. But do you have advice for other people who are thinking about serving? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to get into it. But what advice would you give them if they feel the need to want to give back?
Yeah. So first of all, I never really wanted to get into politics. I've always had an interest, but it was mostly, frankly, because we're independent contractors in WWE, so we had to pay our own taxes.
Yes.
And then when you start realizing where that tax money goes and how much of it is wasted, you got some skin in the game, right? And in fact, I always say if I were to become president, which was never going to happen, but if I were, or I were to get into Congress, or whatever, the first thing I would do would be repeal the withholding tax, because I believe that if people actually had to write a check to the IRS, then they would realize that those refunds that they get in the spring and the early summer was their own money to begin with. Right. And then they'd realize how much money they're actually paying, and it's going to be a lot more than they think it is. So I never really wanted to get into this myself, but I do believe that if good people don't do it, someone else is. And for me, it's about my grandkids. I have 2 daughters. They're both grown. They're both nurses, and they're doing really well. I've been very blessed with great kids. I do worry about their future, but I really worry about what my grandkids are going to inherit.
Right.
Because if we continue on this trend that we're on right now, my whole thing is, man, I grew up on a farm in Missouri. My family didn't have a whole lot. And I was able to travel the world and do all these amazing things and provide my family with a life that I wouldn't have thought possible when I was a little kid. And I think that can only happen in America. It's the American dream. And man, it's dying on the vine right now, and that has lifted so many people up. Millions and millions and millions of people, they've come out of poverty to whatever level. But ultimately it's you. What do you want to do, right? Not everybody's going to make it, but everybody has a chance to make it in this country.
Yes.
And that's what makes us exceptional, and that's what makes us great. And sadly, I think we're losing that. So that would be what I would tell people, is you don't get into it for yourself. You get into it to serve, and you never forget that. And if you do start to forget that, it's time to get out.
Get out. And with that, that's how we're going to end this. Thank you so much, sir, for your time, and keep doing what you're doing, because you're an inspiration to a lot of people, and you give us a lot to think about. Thank you.
You are as well, man. I'm really proud of you and everything that you've done. It's just been awesome to watch.
The only thing I've never been able to do is walk around with my shoelaces off, but I'm trying, man. I'm trying, because the way you could do that with a mask on, it was amazing. So anyone who could do that can certainly govern. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
Yes, sir.